Hello and welcome to your practice. I'm Hannah. Thanks for joining. Today is about working into our hamstrings, and we're going to work through some active and some passive stretching. You'll also target other leg muscles as well. But it would be useful to grab, if you have one, a yoga block or anything else that is something that looks kind of similar. We are not using it as a block in the traditional sort of supportive way. We're using it as something that we're going to lift our leg up and over. So if that helps you find your tool, I would love you to go and find that now, roll out your mat, and I'll meet you right there in a moment. Today's practice is going to be started in child's pose. Maybe you'd like to widen the knees, bring the big toes close together, and then start to walk the hands forwards. You may choose to soften the forehead towards the earth, or place it on top of a cushion or blanket. And just take a few moments to feel your belly expand as you inhale, and let the belly really soften between the thighs. See if you can avoid scooping the belly in too much. Is it possible to really let go through the diaphragm here? Great way to support the nervous system. It's this wonderful deep belly breath, but not super overcharged with the movement either. Just maybe whispering to yourself, I am softening. One more breath here. And then you'll find your way onto hands and knees. Tabletop. Hips on top of the knees, shoulders on top of those wrists. And then just taking whatever kind of movement feels natural. It could be into cat-cows, that might feel familiar. You might do that for a couple of rounds here. Perhaps you'll choose to sway the shoulders and the hips towards one another, little hip sways, or maybe even do some wonderful circular kind of barrel-like movements through the chest, the ribs. And if you've gone one way, going through to the second side, not worrying about the exact shapes that you're creating. And then from here, go ahead and step your right foot forwards, roughly where your right hand is. So shift the weight into that left side a little bit. Maybe there's a bit of dynamic swing. If your foot doesn't quite get there, grab that ankle, pull it forwards. Align yourself so you've got hands either side of that front foot. This could be where your yoga blocks are coming into practice. If that is you, feel free to grab them. And just take a moment to let the hips kind of settle just for another breath, depending what time of the day or just how our body is feeling can really affect what is coming up for us. And then we're going to start to sway the hips back and forth. So if you need a little extra padding under that left knee, go ahead and double up the mat. Pushing the hips back and forth a little bit here, not worrying about straightening completely through that front leg. Again, having blocks in play can give you that little bit more space. So not worrying about exactly how many times you've gone there. We're just lubricating the joints a little bit here, opening up a little through the muscles of those legs. And then one more time, go ahead and extend through the front leg. Bring your hands over to the right side of that leg and then pivot so that the outer edge of your right foot is to the earth. kind of a funky gate pose here, funky runner's lunge. If you do have props like a sofa, you could always prop yourself up, or a chair. Last breath. And then walking your way forwards by bending through the front leg, hands to the inside of that right foot, palms to the earth, tuck the back toes, hover the knee, take a moment in this energizing lizard lunge. Can we power up through the back leg? One more breath. And then we want to be nice and strong through the back foot, but also see if we can bring our weight into our hands and that right leg. We're going to tip slightly to the right side. You want to bounce off the back foot and lift the hips to step left foot up outside of the hands. We're not quite in a squat, but I've got the arms to the inside of those legs. It could be that you're holding onto your ankles instead. We're seeing if we can find some strength in the quads here. So we want to get to a point where we feel our glutes, our hamstrings, our quads really starting to engage here, just to hold the buttocks in place. Maybe you have hands on blocks, but we're seeing if we can avoid kind of pressing all of our weight in there. So I've just taken all of the weight out of my legs. It's just giving you a little lift if you need it. Maybe hands to those ankles. Last breath. And then gently forward fold by walking the feet in closer, roughly to hip width, not wider. Maybe fingers are drawn to the inside of the elbows, taking our way to a little ragdoll. And then keeping a softness through the knees, we start to roll our way up. Head is heavy. Keep breathing steady. A little shrug of the shoulders. So it might feel good just to take a little wiggle at the hips. Let's reach the arms up, inhale, and forward fold, exhale. We'll work through the second side, take a halfway lift, inhale. Step back to downward facing dog. Ripple forwards through to high plank. Perhaps it's a cat-cow moment for you. Perhaps it is chaturanga. Exhaling, perhaps. We're going to meet again in tabletop pose. And you might be transitioning through a little vinyasa to get there. Hands, paws under the shoulders, hips underneath those knees. Oh, that would be interesting. Knees underneath those hips. All right, so we're going to place left foot roughly where the left hand is. I'm going to do a little gentle swing. Place the foot there as gracefully as we can. Take a moment just to set up, just to feel in. Don't worry too much if the knee is further forwards. It's actually very healthy for the knee to travel forwards of that ankle. It's a yoga myth. We just try to avoid that the knee kind of collapses inwards to the center. But get to a place where you feel like you can hang just for another 2 breaths, not judging where the body is going, but observing. We'll be doing that gentle flossing of the joints there, going back and forth, working through the fascia, back and forth with the hips, not overthinking that I must have that front leg straight when I sway the hips back, just feeling in to sensations. You could always double up the mat on that right side. Okay, so the next time that you straighten through the front leg, that's the left leg, walk the hands out, over to the left side. Outer blade of that left foot tries to ground. See where the body might go. Feel where the body is. Becoming familiar with sensations. And then we'll bring the hands forwards again, rebend the front leg. Bring your hands to the inside of that left foot. We end up in a lizard. I didn't really give you orientation on the other side in terms of where your hands and your feet should be, so I think I did it naturally. We want to have that left foot quite wide, just to the inside of the left side of the mat. Maybe it's even wider. Perhaps you've joined me lifting the back knee. So when we step it up, we want to use strength through the back leg, but the aim is actually to lift the hips. If you keep the hips low, it's going to be far harder. Could you lift the hips, a little bounce, hips are high, but the hands stay low, and then bring the hips so that they're sort of in line with the head. If you could imagine where your head, your shoulders are, hips roughly in line there. You might be taking hold of the inside of the ankles, but just noticing how the legs need to fire up to hold us here in this sort of half squat. You could have hands on blocks, but it's not that you're giving all the weight to those hands. They're just kind of holding you in place rather than holding the weight. Knees stay wide. Last breath, work through any wobbles. And then gently forward fold again. Let go. We're going to roll our way up. Inhale, hands rise. And lower down, exhale. Take a halfway lift, inhale. You'll flow however you would like to. It could be cat-cow, it could be straight to downward dog. Take a little vinyasa, meet in downward facing dog. And then we'll do a little hop up. We're going to ultimately end up sitting. So it could be that you walk up, drop the knees gracefully. Some of you might choose a little hop and a bounce and a cross at the ankles. And then grab your tool and decide what height you want it. The higher it is, the more challenging this will be. So let's start low. I'm going to come a little further back. I'm going to start with the left leg bent and the right leg straight. So just seeing where you can be already at this stage. It could be that you need to have your hands back here, and you're going to just work with what is available to you. I'm going to try to stay much more upright and just have the fingers gently touching behind. You could also prop through the bent leg if that's uncomfortable for you in any way. We're going to fire up through the muscles on that right leg. So this is not just hamstrings, it's definitely working all of the quadricep muscles here as well. We're going to fire up so that you can actually just start to hover your right heel off the earth. So that's relaxed and that's fired up. If possible, try and engage so that the kneecap draws towards the hips, and then we're going to lift and see if we can drop slowly. We're going to do that a couple of times. Maybe you can manage about 3 times. If it's possible, you don't even lower the leg at all. You keep an extra challenge of, oh, that's hard. That's not working for me. Far too much quads going on there. I'm going to test myself out though and see whether I can go a little bit higher. And this is not a competition. It's just seeing where my capabilities are on this leg today in this moment. And again, firing up through the leg muscles. I'm going to take that little pause and that little breather, but I am attempting to lower the leg as quietly as I can. Taking that little breather. I'm noticing that I'm having to use a lot more core here. We see if we can stay upright. And that's going to be it for me. If you want to test yourself out on that next level, feel free to pause, give it a try. From here, I'm going to remove that block, keeping the left leg bent, but remove any prop from underneath it. Swing the left hand behind you, fingers face towards the back of the mat. Sway the hips forwards towards that left knee into a little wild thing variation here. Whatever you want to do with that right foot. So it could be that you've brought sole of foot to the earth. Maybe you've pointed the toes to the ceiling, flexing the foot forwards. One more breath. And then from here, drop the hips, snuggle the right heel behind you, and then start to soften the hands back towards the earth behind you. So we've got deer legs going on, but we're seeing if we can find lovely length and a release of those legs through the front of that right thigh. Did I mention that this is also a quad workout today? So whenever we've got opposing muscles either side of the body. More often than not, they're going to be working somehow in unison for our movement practice. You might have chosen to lower down even further, but I'm getting a really juicy stretch and sensation that I'm enjoying being a little higher. 2 more breaths. Slowly go ahead and walk the hands forwards. And then I'm actually going to bring my right leg back behind me and end up in pigeon pose. So left knee is bent slightly out to the left side, and start to soften down onto the forearms, or perhaps on towards the earth. We see if we can keep the hips roughly parallel, so you've not dropped down deeply through one hip. Could you soften any more through that back leg, through the buttocks, through the feet? And then slowly come to meet me in downward facing dog. Hands to the earth, tuck the back toes, step it up and back, and give that a little generous pedal. So again, we're either going to gracefully walk the feet forwards and then slowly bring the hips down to one side, or we're going to hop the ankles up, cross the ankles. Could you bring the other ankle in front, if you can remember? And then from here, we will keep the right leg bent this time and the left leg long and straight. Bringing our prop back into practice, into play. So we want to fire up through that left leg so much that the heel could potentially lift up off the earth. So you're flexing through the left leg. You could also support yourself underneath that right knee. You could place something under the hips. Hands are supporting you nice and tall, engage lightly through core, and then just see what's what on this side. So we're going back and forth here. I am needing that little pause, that little break. To hold that in place is just too much for my hip flexors. You might be experiencing the same thing. Tight hips is kind of 2023 disaster zone, hey? All humans have tight hips, I think, from all the sitting that we do. So I'm not going to try and keep going there. I'm going to just see what it's like on that next side, knowing that I'm working a different leg, so we could have very different capabilities. I'm attempting to stay nice and tall throughout this, noticing what leg muscles are really starting to power up here. Having to concentrate my breath a lot more. I'm going to go for one more round. And then bringing out of the way. And then from here, we're coming to pause, and we're going to start to bring our weight over towards the right side. So you'll have your right hand back behind you, fingers pointing to the back of the mat. We want to sway our weight over to that right knee. Little wild thing variation. Choose where you might like to bring your left arm. I've reached it up and over my head. Whatever feels right for you through the left foot. And then we'll slowly soften the hips back down. And as you soften the hips back down, draw that left heel back behind you so we create deer legs and then continue to twist. For me, I'm getting more sensation that I'm enjoying being higher up. You could choose to lower your torso towards the ground. And don't worry if you're not super twisted. Just going to a place that feels right for you. I'm also not even through both hands. I'm just seeing where my torso might go, feeling supported by my arms. And last breath. Slowly facing forwards. We're going to end up in that pigeon pose. So your right knee is going to be bent at the front, left leg's going to swing back behind you. See if you can have the hips pretty even. Maybe you've softened down to the forearms. You could always grab a bolster. Maybe you've widened the elbows and softened. Forehead to the back of the hands. And here we pause. Notice where you might be clenching in the body and send a deep exhalation to that body part. And slowly lifting yourself up, walking those hands in. We'll swing both legs forwards, ending up onto our spine, hips to the center of the mat, and slowly lowering, gathering the knees. Taking hold of the feet, knees are wide. And then softening your way into your variation, savasana. Starting to become aware of your surroundings. Giving a little wiggle, fingers and toes. Maybe a reach overhead and beyond. Gathering the knees. Rolling to the side. And then meeting me upright. Taking a deep breath and offering that breath to yourself. Thank you so much for joining today's practice, and be well. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like it below, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon. Not only will this keep you up to date with my offerings, but will keep content like Tula Being free and accessible to all.